I declare my interest as CEO of Muslim Women's Network UK. I will focus on 4 points: funding, domestic homicide rates of minority ethnic women, spiritual abuse and transnational abandonment. On funding, no funding was pledged to tackle domestic abuse in the last budget. Surprising given Labour's manifesto to reduce violence against women and girls by 50%. In the current funding crisis and the rise in employer national insurance, it will result in many women's organisations scaling back their services and taking very vital support from domestic abuse victims. Can the Minister provide assurance that the next budget will have announcements to tackle domestic abuse? On domestic homicide rates, minority ethnic women have higher domestic homicide rates by around 22%. We can only address this issue if we know why it is happening. So, will the government agree to hold a public consultation to find out what the contributing factors are to the higher rates? It will help to save lives. On spiritual abuse, it is not legally defined and is not limited to abuse by faith leaders. It is also a form of domestic abuse where families and partners may misuse religion to control and manipulate, particularly women and children. A legal definition could help to better recognise this form of abuse and hold perpetrators to account. Will the government consider having a legal definition of spiritual abuse? Can the Noble Lord the Minister also write to me about the number of spiritual abuse cases recorded by the police in the last 5 years? On transnational abandonment, this is another form of domestic abuse. This is when usually the husband will take his wife abroad on a pretence of a holiday and leave her there, and sometimes with children. The wife is usually on a spousal visa waiting for indefinite leave to remain. Helplines such as the one that I run are then left to apply for documents and pay for flights to get the women and children back into the UK. In the first 6 months of 2024, there were 28 transnational abandonment cases. Being abandoned in this way is traumatising. My Lords, it is time to make this a specific criminal offence. Perpetrators need to be held accountable for treating women as if they are property that can be just discarded in this way. Recently in Australia, a man who had deceived his wife to leave the country left her in Sudan. And then he was convicted for exit trafficking and sentenced to more than 4 years in prison. It is time for perpetrators of this type of domestic abuse to also be convicted in the UK. Will the government consider a law change in the UK?